So we're recording this and we will make it available to everybody that participated. And if you can take a minute and change the caption on your photo to your full name and what municipality you belong with. And next Tuesday's training at 7 o'clock is the same presentation that you're going to have today. We'd love to have you join us again if you want to, but just so you know, it will be the same presentation. You can put your questions in the chat and staff are around now to answer them in the chat. And if we don't get to your question for some reason during the session, please feel free to email us at info@anjec.org. So we're going to go over the municipal process for site plan. That's me, Liz Ritter, the Deputy Director at ANJEC. And as I mentioned, we are then going to break out into rooms with hands-on site plans to review with the experts. Dr. Chris Abrupta is with us. He's the Director of the Rutgers Water Resources Program. Jennifer Coffey, the Executive Director at ANJEC, is going to lead another room. And Randy Rothmel, Program Director here at ANJEC, is going to lead the third room. And we'll have other staff that'll be in the breakout rooms to help facilitate that. So we look forward to that. It's new for us, so hope it works. So this is, oh shoot, I have a wrong slide in there. This is a site plan review. So as we've mentioned in previous sessions, we started out with having an environmental resource inventory or natural resource inventory as the basis for your land use planning in your town. From there, you have then the opportunity to sort of shape and plan for your future in your town using the master plan. And from that, you can then maybe work on getting ordinance passed and having your town be protected for all different areas in your town, which is all stuff we went over in the previous sessions. Then we come to site plan review, which is where we are now. So as you know, the municipal land use law gives land use powers to the municipality with very few exceptions. Whoa, what do I have here? I'm sorry, I have some extra slides in here. Okay, so your town should have a site plan ordinance that would show, and it's in the municipal land use law, and it would be showing what kind of things were going to be required by every developer before they come forward to your planning board with their plans. You can review your site plan ordinance. You can ask your township clerk or look on your website. If you're not sure, you can always check with ANJEC and we might be able to help you find that. So there are various number of things that would be included in that, some of which are listed here, but it can be a variety. So we talk about site plan, we talk about subdivision. A site plan is a development plan for an individual lot, one piece of property. A subdivision is when they're dividing a piece of land into two or more lots. So here is an example of the site plan. There are multiple buildings on this site plan, but it's still one lot. If you go to the next one, you'll see where they're dividing this property into different lots. You see one is almost 6 acres, one is about 2 acres, one is 1.5, etc. So that's a subdivision plan. So why would an environmental commission care about what happens with the site plan? Because you guys are the eyes and ears for the environment. The planning board has a lot going on to review. Some site plans can be up to 30 or 40 pages long, and you guys can be the ones that are looking at the environmental resources and paying attention to what's going on with the environment. There's not a planning board person that's going to pay a lot of attention to that. So you guys can be the eyes and ears for them. And they get to rely on you to be that way. So don't be afraid to be asking questions and figuring out how you can contribute. The other thing is that often the planning board will realize that you're saving them money in the end. It's amazing how often you find out that there's some little thing that could have been that the environmental commission catches that the planning board doesn't see. So why would you want to do a site plan review? Well, maybe you'll notice that the plan for erosion control during the construction is not so good, and you might prevent this sort of situation that happened in Parsippany with a muddy road and the retaining wall sort of exploded when there was rain that wasn't planned for, or that wasn't properly planned. So one thing you want to make sure you look at is what's on the site. So the papers that you get will only show the actual site. So you want to see what are they disturbing in the soils? Is there going to be a wetlands problem? Are they disturbing any wetlands? What are they going to be doing when they actually do the construction, which I mentioned that erosion slide a minute ago? What are they going to be doing? Look at that slide and see what kind of damage they might be doing that maybe could be a problem. So the other thing the Environmental Commission is good for is to know what is beyond the paper that you're looking at. What is on the next site? Maybe you all know that there's a pond right behind this lot that really needs to be protected, or that there's going to be a flooding issue if you start digging around in there. Some of the other things you're going to pay attention to is what the water is, what the wildlife habitat, what the neighborhood is like. I mean, that's something that you guys as the Environmental Commission really know a lot about the quality in the neighborhoods. And again, remember what's off the site. Again, you guys are in there and you know your town, and you can go and what is nearby. Is there going to be a traffic problem? As I mentioned, there could be a pond back there. You're going to have a flooding problem. What about vistas or other kinds of farmland? Or is there going to be air quality? Are you going to have a stormwater problem? Even if it's off site, are you going to have a stormwater problem? So here's the sort of the process that happens. There's usually a pre-application or informal meeting in your town. They don't always publicize this, so this is a good time to get friendly with the planning board secretary. If she likes coffee or he likes coffee, you might want to bring him a cup every now and then when you're allowed to get back into town hall anyway. And keep yourself in touch, because they are not necessarily required to invite you to these pre-application or informal meetings, but you might want to say that you can help out. And the earlier you get involved with any questions or suggestions you have, the better it is, because every time the developer has to redo a plan, it costs them money. So they're not interested. Then what happens is once the pre-application happens, their application is actually submitted, which includes an environmental impact statement, the checklist, if there's wetlands delineation needed from DEP, which is called a letter of interpretation, LOI, that would be included. So all through this process, these first two processes, you want to be involved, and you want to be asking questions and seeing if you can find things out and make suggestions. Once this third thing happens, the application is completeness, the application is determined to be complete, it's kind of over for your suggestions. So make sure that you're involved early. You are supposed to, if your Environmental Commission has an ERI on file with the town, you are supposed to get development plans in a timely manner. That means you may get them the day before the planning board hearing, and it may be you get them a month before, but this is where your relationships will help you. Once the application is determined complete, there's a preliminary approval and a final approval. And again, you want to be involved before completeness happens. So here's a little example of some that you're going to, this is what a site plan, the paper might look like. They're usually pretty large, like 24 by 36. Am I right, Chris? Is that the size? I can't remember.
I'm flipping the
You're muted.
So fast.
Usually 24 inches by 36 inches, but when they typically send them to me on the Environmental Commission, they print them out 11 by 17, so it's smaller. And it's a little bit harder to see. So I recommend some way to magnifying glass, usually with a light around it. That's usually great. So I think they should hand that out to every environmental commissioner. Be required. So
I think so too. Okay, so this one is one of the sheets. It's an example of a landscape plan. And you see that they're showing all the trees here where they're going to be, and if there are any trees that they did not remove. And then you'll see that little red box in the corner. You can see then it lists all the plants and what size they're going to be. So again, this is something that we find a lot of environmental commissions can really put their teeth into pretty easily without a whole lot of expertise, which is fine. You can start out learning how to do site plans on a very basic basis. And as you go and you learn, our staff, we actually had a practice for this yesterday, about an hour and a half. And I think we all learned something new about reviewing site plans. So you never stop learning, and that's okay. And asking questions is what you want to be doing. And you should don't get intimidated because there are things that you don't know. And again, as I said, a lot of these landscape plans can be a good way to get in. Make sure that they're using all native plants. That's not a big deal for a developer to agree to use only in natives. And obviously you want to make sure there are no invasives. And but you can see what the sizes are, and maybe you want to comment on how maybe they shouldn't all be the same size, because then they'll have better growth and better chance of survival. So those are some of the main things. The other thing you should know is that wetlands are regulated by the state. So your town cannot have more protection on wetlands than what is designated by the state. I mentioned that there's a letter of interpretation that comes with any wetland from DEP. And you just want to make sure that they have gotten the LOI, and that once that LOI has been submitted to DEP asking for them to interpret the wetlands, the Environmental Commission could maybe, you'll get a map and you could see where the developer is saying the wetlands are. And if you think maybe that's not correct, you can absolutely reach out to DEP directly and say, hey, we see these wetlands and we've walked with the lot, and we're suspicious that maybe the wetlands are bigger or smaller or whatever than they could be. So just because DEP is the one that rules on it doesn't mean you can't contribute to the conversation. So this is one of the ways that you'll see wetlands delineated on the plans. You guys are going to see them on the plans that when in your breakout rooms. And you'll see this one actually shows where they are taking away a little bit of a transition of the wetland and making it up over here on the right side. Again, you'll see this on the plans we're doing. So the other thing that the Environmental Commission is allowed to do is to have a visit of the site. So physically go out and walk the site. You must notify the applicant, and you should make sure with your planning board or that nobody else is going, and that you plan your visits accordingly. Also plan your visits in certain times a year so that if there's a vernal pond, for instance, it might not be wet except for certain times a year. And you can ask the applicant to do things like mark the boundaries and where the wetlands are. Bring these papers with you, take pictures, and make sure you include the notes from your site visits in any report you do to the planning board on your thing. So then it's time for you to get together and analyze your plans. As you can see, these are what those plans look like, and you want as many people in your commission that can have the time to review them, because everybody will see something different, and that's terrific. Make sure that these plans are complying with your ordinances, and make sure that that the services and all that they're going to be supplying to the town on this property are being met. And again, this seems overwhelming in the beginning, but take it in pieces. Don't be overwhelmed and intimidated by the fact that you get these 35 pieces of paper and you don't know what 30 of them are, but you know what the landscape plan one is, so work on that one. That's great. So then you want to do a written report. Your Environmental Commission should do a written report to the planning board. You can, here's what you've found, here's what you think the impacts are going to be. You absolutely can ask questions, and you absolutely want to make sure that your planning board liaison is there and I'm speaking on the behalf of the Environmental Commission. But we also recommend that Environmental Commission member who's not the liaison go to the planning board hearing. And sometimes maybe there aren't a lot of questions or a lot of recommendations. Maybe the plan is good and it's doing good development. So that's okay too. Okay, we are now ready to go into the breakout rooms. Are there any major questions I need to answer before that?
Yeah, Liz, there was one question in the chat from Nancy Tyndall. Can an EC review applications for the zoning variances and comment the use variance impact on the environment?
Yes. As you'll see in the breakout rooms, the first page, typically the first page of the whole site plan will have a note about all the variances that are applied for, and you absolutely will want to review those and make comments. So yes, absolutely. You should be willing, if you feel comfortable, you can comment on all of it. I mean, you'll see sometimes there might be a setback thing, which is 5 feet, and maybe that's not going to be a big problem. But yes, you want to pay attention to the variances, and you'll see that in the breakout rooms. You'll see examples of that and what you want to be concerned about. So we are going to go into breakout rooms. I think you'll get a little pop-up that says, we've asked you to move into the breakout room. You just need to acknowledge that, and we will, what's going to happen is when you're done in your breakout room, you're just going to leave the total session, and we will record the breakout rooms and share this presentation I just did, as well as the breakout rooms with you all after this. So, okay, I'll see you guys a little later.
Hi, Liz. I think I just received another notification that I pressed and I jumped out. Was I?
Yes, the breakout rooms did not create correctly, so I'm going to redo them in a minute. Sorry.
Yeah, Alex and Chris were in one room, and I think Jennifer. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, I mean, that wasn't the problem. It didn't create enough. So here we
Nice
go
to meet
again.
you, by the way. We've corresponded by email.
I got to
Hey,
give it a
come on,
minute.
Liz, let's get it together, girl. Come on.
Yeah. Mother May, baby.
Okay, so we're